Hey everyone, Sari here, and welcome back to another week of Anima Season defense matches. I've been pretty happy with how the new defense layout's done so far, but there were a couple of adjustments I still wanted to make. Helen Ninion's a very important addition to the team. Not only is her health high enough to consistently dodge being isolated by Fjorm, she also offers Leggjarn an enabler for her weapon that can't be turned off by false start or skills like Distant Defense 4. The breath effect itself is also really strong, giving Leggjarn a nearly unstoppable Deadeye, and the 6 attack is a great bonus on top. Her weapon's Triandra-like ruse is a nice extra perk, but it's something that can be replaced if she needs extra health from a refinable weapon once her bonus week is over. Corin's another new face to the team. I've mostly used her for my arena matches since the Hero Rises earlier this year, but she also happens to be a great threat to pair with Leggjarn. Having a magical alternative gives the team a way to break through most tanks, and the basic rally trap also helps the team pick a winning combat in more situations. She did end up taking Blade Session from Leggjarn, but the extra bulk from Fury can be important for helping Leggjarn survive long enough to launch a Deadeye on her second attack. The tactics on Ninion and Mirabilis are another fun addition. They're actually pretty safe from Elamine since both dancers have exceptional res stats, and they boost Leggjarn's weapon while also helping Felix's ability to survive some of the more lethal ranged threats in the game. Meanwhile, Gatekeeper's new Rally Up completes the potential spectrum of buffs, even if it's a little less reliable than I'd like at the moment. The defense did really well this week, only suffering a single clean loss the entire time. It ended up as a zero lift loss season, which is really great to see these days. I'm looking forward to fine-tuning it some more going forward, but I think it's in a pretty good spot at this point. So let's get to the first match. This match was a fun way to start off the week. It's actually not too often that you see a near-safe Hector instead of the far-safe variety, but they are backing him up with a very solid far-save tank in Fjorm. And the two of them are getting a lot of support from this Flame and Elamine, which provides them both with about 50% extra damage reduction, a little bit less for Fjorm since it's stacking up with her already in place Hardy Fighter. But it makes them both very difficult to break through. Fjorm in particular gets really hard to handle, especially if she can actually outspeed her opponents, and they just move in here on the first turn. Unfortunately, while they do have a fallen Ninion of their own, it doesn't do much to Leggjarn, who clears her debuffs by ending the turn immediately, and while Fjorm does get to survive this first hit, she still can't quite one-shot Leggjarn on the counter, and the Deadeye means that Leggjarn has no problems taking her down on the second hit. And without Fjorm guarding them, Corin can pick up a very easy knockout on Ninion. And while we don't get in range of the rest of their team, it's enough for them to surrender the match and move on. This match was a bit of an odd one. It's always a little awkward to see someone take a messy win like this early in the week. But a win's a win in the end, I guess. They brought along a pretty solid team overall, with plenty of options to work with, including both a near-save bonus week Rhea and a far-save tank in Fjorm. Altina gives them some vantage options to work with as well if they can get her safely into that range. And Fafnir is just really good at navigating around the map and disarming traps and breaking through some of the far-save tanks on the table. Azura is also always a very solid dancer. Her ability to give infantry and flyers extra movement on top of a full spectrum of stats gives her a lot of options and lets her fit into just about any team. They decide to go in on the second turn here and use Altina to bait things out with Fjorm backing her up. But unfortunately, Fjorm's not using Deflect Magic, and that means Corin can just move in and wipe her out. And well, without Fjorm in the way, Altina's a very easy knockout for Leggjarn to secure. And that's just 2 knockouts right at the start. I decide to keep pushing on here, and the bolt tower hit makes things pretty easy to start cleaning up. Flipping Rhea forwards means she can finish Leigern off. And once they dance Reagan, she can move in and finish off Felix. And without Felix to worry about, Fafnir doesn't have any problems finishing Corinth off. We do end up slightly rallying around the map here. A Gatekeeper moves in and, well, he's not going to get much damage done to Rhea. Even if he does actually meet that res check, which was kind of funny to see. This part doesn't end so well either. Zeros is not having a good time with her alter ego. Mostly because we don't have no follow-up available. But after that, Gatekeeper does get danced and finds much better combat with Reagan, even if he's not quite going to get to finish her off. And from there they just keep cleaning things up. Azura can finish off Zeros pretty easily. And then they have Reagan go after Gatekeeper. I think they were expecting Reagan to finish Gatekeeper off here, but he's a little bulky, and she can't quite manage it. Fafnir, on the other hand, doesn't have any problems with it. And from there, it's easy enough for Rhea to just tank Mirabilis. And, well, there's not much that Ninion's going to do on her own. It is funny to watch them run directly into 2 traps, though. And while Ninion doesn't really do much, once she gets onto this defense tile, it's actually a little bit tricky for Rhea to finish her off. She can eventually punch through Ninion thanks to the true damage based on res, but that's all the damage she ends up getting to do.
I will help.
But high res or not, Ninion's still pretty stranded here, and isn't going to manage a miracle in a 1v4 like this. They did take all 7 turns to do it, but eventually they take her down and close out the match. This match was a bit of an odd one. It's kind of rare to see a base kit Hector these days. I do think it's still a pretty reasonable kit, especially with the refined Multet. It makes him a reasonably solid multi-phase unit. But without specializing for one phase or the other, he's a bit vulnerable to a lot of the player phase nukes that are available for defenses to use these days. Backing him up with both a Fjorm and an Elmine is a really good way to get around that, though. The combination of the two is enough to let him handle a lot of defenses even without a save skill, by denying any pre-charged nonsense, or also disabling the rally trap that we've got here. Leigern gets danced in here, but she doesn't actually have enough attack to finish Hector off, which is really impressive to see. And since Mirabilis is isolated, nobody else can get in range here, so it's pretty easy for them to heal Hector up and move him into at least attempt to bring Leigern down. And once they dance him, he can finish her off. And then they can dance him one more time and let him go in on Felix with the Cygnus.
Prepare to die.
They are in a bit of an awkward spot here, though. Hector can't actually protect his allies, because he's not using a save skill, and he's also directly in the crosshairs of Corrin at this point. So Seros starts things off by taking down Plumeria.
I knew it.
And then gets danced. And Azura ends up going after, or Corrin ends up going after Azura instead.
It's all over.
It's mostly just because Hector didn't actually have enough health to bait Corrin into attacking him instead. But at that point, it's easy enough for Seros to actually finish the job. Gatekeeper moves in on Elamine, but he's not really here to do too much damage. He's mostly here just to be a support and a nuisance. But at this point, without Hector, they don't really have many options to work with. The Bolt Tower does a lot, and does let Naga go in and get a knockout on Corrin. And the effective damage does also let Elamine take down Seros. But from there, Elamine can't actually retreat, thanks to Kanto control. And Gatekeeper getting topped off is going to make things very hard for them to actually finish.
I go to God.
Kanto control also means that Mirabilis gets to pick up an easy knockout, and while Gatekeeper can't quite finish off Naga here, he takes her down to 1 hit point, and then gets danced for a pretty easy knockout with the Spawnfire.
You're suspicious. Such power.
And now that they've only got Fjorm left on the field, they surrender the match and move on. This match was another interesting one to see, especially on the heels of that last one. They brought along a Fallen Edelgard as their carry of choice, and backed her up with another Fjorm and Elamine. It was interesting to see so many Fjorms this week. I haven't seen too much of her before now, so it's fun to see her turning up again, and I imagine we'll start seeing a lot more of her when her Refine kicks in next month. Having Niffle along as well gives Edelgard a lot of extra damage reduction on the first hit, even beyond the first combat, which can sometimes be a bit of a sticky point for her. And once they let her transform, they move her in to start tanking and back her up with both Elamine and Niffle. Isolating Corrin, of course, means that our rally trap doesn't go off. But this time, Leikern is going to have a much easier time punching through this.
By my flame.
Deadeye cuts through all of the damage reduction options, and Edelgard can't actually prevent that follow-up attack. They decide to keep going here. The Bolt Tower, once again, does a lot of work for softening things up. And Niffle can move in to take Leikern out. And then, after they clear Plumeria's gravity effect, they can help her retreat. Unfortunately, from here, they've got a bit of a problem in, well, the rest of the team. And Corrin can move in to knock out Ashura pretty easily, even with all of the damage reduction. And, well, Gatekeeper steps forward to be a nuisance and get in the way. Getting this bonfire towards charged for free, though, is honestly really useful, because if he ends up getting to use it, he's actually a pretty significant threat. And Felix just pivots over Corrin to keep everybody safe from their ranged. Niffle being all the way in the corner there actually backfires a bit, since she can't actually reach anything that she could handle, and attacking into Gatekeeper would only fully charge that bonfire.
I can't be your bride.
Which means Corrin gets to start skating around the map some more, and pick up another knockout on Fjorm. Nifl's not really going to have any problems shrugging a strictly enemy phase Felix off, and can handle Gatekeeper too. Mirabilis, sadly, gets herself baited into attacking,
Freeze.
which means that Nifl can finish one of our units off in the enemy phase. And then Gatekeeper gets danced,
Stop right there.
and gets a chance to put this bonfire to use. From there, they're really out of options at this point. They do have Elamine pick off Corrin, but with only Plumeria and Elamine left, there's not much they're going to be able to do to Felix. They make an attempt at it though, and have Elamine back up all the way into the corner, and use Plumeria to distract the Theros. At least for one combat. And we don't get to dance here, so they just continue retreating into the corner. Gatekeeper, again, just moves in and starts recharging his bonfire. Even if he can't actually knock her out in one round of combat, the dance means that he gets a chance to actually finish the job here.
I go to God.
This match was a fun one to see. They brought along a legendary Secret on their offense team. I don't really see him much on offenses. He's usually more of a defense unit. But I do think he does a lot for enabling all-in player phase strategies like this one, with his Holy Knight Aura giving extra movement to the Erica and Marianne, and the Reagan, and the Dancers too. I think they're mostly counting on Wings of Mercy to move in and close things out. But the extra movement can really help them navigate the map in case Wings of Mercy doesn't work. Like on a map like this, with Gatekeeper involved. They take a turn here just to start setting up and moving in, and decide to pull the trigger here. This fight actually ends up being pretty neutral overall. While Seeker does get to use 2 Holy Knight Auras, Seros has plenty of damage reduction and a triangle advantage to work with, so she survives this pretty easily, even if she doesn't get a chance to actually knock him out on the counter. They take a gamble on this heavy trap and move Erica in to
You have been judged.
finish things off. This fight actually makes me kind of want to use Glacies on Seros instead of Iceberg. Once Seros is out of the way, Sigurd can move in and take down Gatekeeper,
Withdraw your blade.
which lets Erica move in and take down Felix with her Gale Force. From there, they Kanto her down to move her out of the way and get their Wings of Mercy going. But unfortunately, when Marianne Wings of Mercy's in to take down Corrin, she just barely misses the speed check, and they don't get the extra action they were looking for. This match was a bit of an odd one to see. It's very rare to see Hell on an offense team, at least until the Chaos seasons hit. And even more when she's on an Astra team instead of a light one. I think she's a bit lost here. It is fun to see her though, and I'm actually very much looking forward to using her on my offenses in Chaos weeks now. So it's just fun to see her. It's a bit of an odd team all throughout, but Pasita and Igreen are really great as flexible player phase or potentially enemy phase units, and if they can clean out the mages on a team, or anything with auto follow-ups, Hell can probably just checkmate the rest of the squad. Unfortunately, they end up leaving Reagan in our attack range here, which means that Leigern can just move in and immediately find a knockout. Sadly, Corrin doesn't rally forwards, so Mirabilis ends up dancing Gatekeeper, and we don't get a second knockout here. Then they decide to keep pushing forward with it. Sita attacking Zeros is a bit spooky, but she ends up chunking Zeros down pretty considerably. And then gets danced and can go after Leigern. And once Zeros is at 5 hit points, it's pretty easy for Hell to move in and finish the job. Before getting danced and moving further in to, oddly, go after the Aether Pot instead of Felix or Gatekeeper. Unfortunately for them, even Guard Bearing isn't really going to save Hell from Corrin here. She doesn't have a miracle. And Corrin gets danced. Doesn't get to take the next knockout. Felix steps in to take out Azura. And Gatekeeper actually gets to move in and finish off Sita.
Too soon for goodbyes.
And then gets danced himself. Rallies Corrin, who goes after Plumeria.
I knew it.
And well, they still have a green, but she's not going to have a very good time when she's the only unit left. Even if the Bolt Tower does let her finish Felix off. It's a little too late, and once Gatekeeper dances Corrin, and rallies Corrin and gets danced, Corrin can move in and
Your time is up.
close out the match.
I failed.
This match was another fun one to see. They brought along a bit of a blend of save your tanking and hit and run approaches. There are actually a lot of options available to them with this team. Chrom's a great way to snipe any target that's giving them trouble, and with Special Spiral he can actually fire off multiple Deadeyes a turn if he needs to. Sita, meanwhile, is again a pretty solid flexible phase unit who can really carve her way through a lot of the Cavline type approaches that people tend to use more of these days. And of course, Idun and Furum are just a really, really solid savior pair, especially with an Elamine backing them up. They take a turn here to move in and actually end up getting that Deadeye disabled after they fully charged on the first turn, but it's easy enough for Chrom to recharge it and go after Felix. Felix almost survives this, actually. It's a little unfortunate he couldn't quite manage it, but well, effective damage Deadeyes do a lot of work. And from there, they just retreat. They actually end up getting far enough out of our range to avoid being attacked here, which I'm not sure they intended to do. And funnily, Chrom can't actually find a knockout here. I really expected him to go after Gatekeeper, but I don't think he could quite finish Gatekeeper off with that defense tile in play. And of course, well, from here, Leigern is going to have a pretty easy time taking Furum out, especially with a defense tile to work with.
Princess Leigern.
And without Furum to worry about, Corrin can move in and pick off Idun. Cirrus ends up repositioning Corrin back, and then gets danced, which lets her go in on Sita. And while Sita does get to steal her combat her
My condolences.
visible bonuses, it's not enough to let her survive this iceberg.
Soon for goodbyes.
And from there it's pretty hard for them to actually get much done, so they take a knockout on Legiorn with this Deadeye.
Will this do?
Then dance him, and concede the match. It was a little odd to get this far into the week without seeing a Farsave Hector involved, but he finally turned up here. This one's not using Hardy Fighter, instead going for the Special Fighter Bonfire for one-shots on the counter swing, which I do think works out really well, even now. Hardy Fighter's an excellent defensive option, but sometimes just being able to finish off your opponent in one hit is a better way to approach it. They've also got a very impressive near-save partner for him with Edelgard and an L9 to tie everything together. And I do think this is a pretty solid team overall. Just a pretty straightforward save ball, and you just move in on the first turn and get ready to go. Unfortunately for Hector, and a bit surprisingly, this one doesn't have as good of a time handling Legiorn as the far less merged Hector we saw earlier in the week.
To protect my friend.
And thanks to Guard, Legiorn can shut down the bonfire before finishing him off with that Deadeye. Gatekeeper actually runs very far away to use that rally, but even without the extra stats, it's easy enough for Corrin to carve through Edelgard. And even if nobody else gets in range, losing those two is enough for them to surrender and move on. This match was the clean loss of the week, which is always a bit unfortunate to see. They did bring along a very impressive Linja though. The only thing she's missing is a Floret. And they've got plenty of solid backup for her, including this plus 10 Thor, Video Peony, and the Reagan. Having two Dancers and a Linja with Disarm Trap has honestly been a really good way to clear defenses ever since she released. And it is a bit unfortunate to see her actually pull this off. They take a turn here just to move in and get ready to start, and also wait for their bolt tower to fire. We don't get to actually snipe it, so it does soften things up for them. And once they're ready, they flip Peony over to make sure Linja's going to get all of her attack bonuses online, and wait one more turn. She actually ends up needing that crossfire attack, since Felix is 2 points of defense away from surviving those hits. It's unfortunate to see that, honestly. There's not many ways I can actually improve his defense further with the current setup. And well, from there the Bolt Tower makes it pretty easy for Reagan to finish Cirrus off, and Lyn can just start sweeping everything else. Especially once she moves in to snipe Corrin and take out the duo's entrance.
Prepare yourself.
Which lets all of the extra dances come through, so she can finish off Legiorn and get danced one more time to take down Minion.
Go for it.
While she is in range of Mirabilis here, the Mirabilis is never going to threaten a 71 hit point Linsha. And after they tank that, it's easy enough for them to pick up the pot and close out the match.
Lynn, you're a wonder. This is it. Yes, what she said.
It was a satisfying rematch. This match was a nice way to rebound after the last one. They brought along the first young Ike I've seen outside of his bonus week to visit my defenses. I do think he's actually a very strong unit still, and if we don't see too much of him on defenses, it's probably just because he's a seasonal at a time when people were focused on other units. It probably also doesn't help that he's another sword in a very long series of god swords. But backing him up with Flame and Delamine here is a great way to just let him sweep entire enemy teams. His built-in no follow-up makes it pretty hard for anything to actually get a second hit. And when he's getting that much damage reduction on the first hit, it's not so easy for anything to crack him. Unfortunately for him, Arlegern is very, very fast, and actually gets to double him naturally, while also avoiding the instant ether thanks to guard. And with that out of the way, Corrin can just move in and pick off Flame.
Mother, soon.
And at that point, they're willing to surrender the match and move on. This match was a fun way to close out the week. They brought along what's probably the most invested Valentine's Ike I've ever seen. He's honestly just so impressive. The combination of unities makes him really hard to handle if anything attacks into him, especially when combined with Savvy Fighter. And your save means that he can just focus on the melee matchups and crush them. Fjorm's always a very capable far-save tank, although this one is maybe a little bit less invested than their Ike, and can make her a weak point in their save ball that they have put together for this team. Having Elamine does help a lot for supporting that, and the damage reduction can be enough for her to just one-shot whatever she gets attacked by, or at least survive it. Unfortunately though, the odd pulse tie that Ninion's running means that Fjorm doesn't actually get to keep her Ice Mirror, which lets Leigern just run in and one-shot her. She's not actually getting any support from Elamine either, thanks to the Green Feud. And without Fjorm guarding them, Corrin can move in and eventually take down the Ike. Nobody else gets in range there, but that's enough for them to concede the match and move on. This was another fun week of replays. It's actually been a while since I've gotten a Zero Lift Loss season, so it's great to see the defense doing this well. I'll probably tweak a couple more things going forwards, but overall I'm happy with where the defense is at, and I'll probably stick with this layout for a while. I do have a Discord server if you'd like to hang out and chat. There's a link in the description, and I've also got a Patreon page there too if you'd like to help support the channel. As always, I hope you've enjoyed the video, good luck with your own matches, and I'll see you next time.